Hey Facebook, I'm back. To discuss a little bit more about Brian Kohlberger. I've been posting a lot of videos today and yesterday, and the videos, I've heard so much information. Some of it I'm not going to discuss because I don't know if it's accurate, and if it's not coming from law enforcement or news station that's credible, I don't want to put it out in the atmosphere, in the universe, for somebody else to pick it up, and it could be misinformation. So I did hear some interesting things, but I don't know if it's true or not, so I can't confirm it, so I'm not going to repeat it. But it's just some very interesting things. But feel free to review those videos that I share. Most of them I can listen to and follow, and I won't say that I agree with them, but I like to share videos that I feel are well made with good information, solid information, and it's not a lot of personal opinions, and it's not fluff. Like, you're just not making videos for views and clicks. So some things that I want to talk about more in detail. For the forensic side, that would be the blood, the DNA, any fingerprints, shoe impressions, tire impressions, how a crime scene looks, how it's captured, if it's captured with video, pictures, any video that's taken from neighbors' homes. Those type of things we have to consider also. So it's some things that we have to discuss, and things that I ponder, that I'm concerned about, that I think about when I think about the case, and some, questions that I have that, I would like to see answered and discussed more in depth. So I don't want to be all over the place, but tonight I'm kind of going to be all over the place because I just have a lot of thoughts. And sometimes it can kind of feel like I'm everywhere. But, for example, in the beginning, they talked about a tire impression outside of the house. And it took them a couple of days, from what I can recall, for them to take that impression. And the important thing about that, there has not been any follow-up to say that tire impression matches this known tire on this car. The size, the width, they can do that. They can compare the exact tire, left tire, right tire, rear, front, and they can pretty much make a examination to see if that tire matches. Now, not that they have to come out and tell us all the evidence, but that's something that I don't want to forget about, is that tire impression that was supposed to be taken from the house on the outside. And they have waited a couple of days, so I'm not sure how accurate that is, because if you notice in those videos that people posted of the neighborhood, the drive-thrus, all of the people that live there, that park there, I'm wondering, could that tire impression have been left by someone else? What I'm also noticing is, when I've watched other people videos, there are a lot of white four-door cars, even a four-door white Elantra, parked regularly in that area, because there's so many residents that live in those homes. And when I say homes, I don't mean physical built buildings. I mean the structures have a lot of people living there, and some of those people are going to have vehicles, even though it's close to campus. So that's something that we have to think about too. Not just the white car, how prevalent it is in that area, but also that tire impression that they did take, and was it a match? I don't think it's as valuable. Reason being is because it took them days to do the tire impression. Same day, okay. We already know that a lot of people came to the crime scene, entered the crime scene. Most of those people were probably on foot, but some of those people could have been driving, as well as police vehicles. So we just got to think about all that stuff when we're considering evidence, and the value of evidence. How old is it? Has it been distorted? There was some snow that later came because you're looking at mid-November in Idaho. So we just want to make sure that we're using some common sense with some of this evidence, and if it's inequality. Something that I also want to talk about. Are you tapping me? My daughter is here. She's not supposed to be a distraction, but she's tapping my leg, and that's a distraction. Something I also want to talk about. In one of the videos, someone said that there was 2 sets of stairs in the home. Now, I have seen a layout. I have seen a staircase that goes from the first floor to the second floor. Then a second set of stairs, a shorter staircase that goes from the second floor to the third floor. But I do not recall at all seeing 2 separate sets of stairs in the property. If somebody is aware of that, that could also be valuable, because if there's more than one entry and exit on each floor, that's something to consider. And also, we know that there was a balcony on the second floor, so someone could literally drop down or jump off that second floor balcony. So that's another exit entry for the property. So that's something, we want to keep in mind when we're looking for evidence. Any witness IDs or anything like that, we want to make sure we're considering that. I'm going to go in heavy when I get inside the house to talk about some of the things inside the house. I'm just going through my notes, and I think this is it. This is the point where we have to start talking more heavy. It's been a few broadcasters, anchors, YouTube personalities talking about the crime scene. And some of these people have law enforcement experience, policing experience, detectives, investigators, and they're just not being truthful. There's no easy way to cut it, to say it. You just have to be honest. We have to tell the public the truth. And it's something that's really, it's like a shield of protection. The average person does not fully comprehend what has really happened. Law enforcement, any investigators, any police officers, crime scene techs, the medical examiner, the prosecutors, and probably the defense, they know. They've seen pictures, and some of them were at the scene, and there may be video. Hopefully there was video taken. They have something else where they can take a full capture of the scene, and that's helpful, but video is also helpful. And this is why I also don't support, and I've said this before in my first video, the tearing down of the property 1122 King Road, because that is evidence. That is a scene that cannot be fully reproduced, recreated. It needs to stand as is until at least the first, and I'm calling it first trial, because we don't know if there will be a mistrial. We don't know if there will be not guilty. We don't know if there will be an appeal. We don't know the future. So at least until there's a full first trial completed. And reason being is because if that jury needs to go on site and see the property, see how it looks in the daytime, see how it looks at night, walk through, see where the roommates were on the first, second, and third floor. That's very important. It gives them more of a benefit to understand the layout, especially because the layout, I won't say it was complicated, but it's different because of the additions. Also, because one roommate on the first floor, as I've explained in great detail in my first video, may not even know there's a roommate on the third floor. They may not hear them or see them. I don't think there was a camera system. If there was, that was never introduced or brought up. So there's really no alert to say somebody's already on the third floor. Somebody's already entered the house. Somebody's on the second floor. If you're one of two roommates, because there's 2 bedrooms on each floor, 2, 2, and 2, you may not know. You may be on the third floor, may not hear somebody come in on the first floor, and that's living on the first floor. So it's just important for them to try to maintain that scene, that crime scene, for a future walkthrough, or even to go back for additional information, and for the defense benefits, so they can go back and see how the crime occurs, see the layout, see the rear, see the entry from the rear, see the entry point of the front, see the back porch, see first, second, and third floor, because they won't have the benefit of that experience. So that's something that they may want to do, or take their own crime scene techs and analysts and any type of law enforcement to have a background to help them for their defense. So that's why it's important for that scene to be preserved. So sadly, we have to discuss some things, and there's just no easy way to talk about it. You have to talk about it. I'm going to try to be sensitive and think. So if I'm speaking slowly, it's only because I'm trying to use my words respectfully, out of consideration for the family and the victims, because that's important. That's important to me, and that should be important in everybody's decision making when they come and they're given information that's may possibly be shared. So we're gonna start with something easy. A question that was posed in my brain was, I really didn't pose it, but it was a conversation being had in a video I was watching, and somebody said, how did they leave the scene? Now, it's kind of like a not a silly or funny question, but kind of an odd question, because most people are going to assume that they weren't part of that community and they got in a car and drove away, right? That is something that could have happened. We don't know. Some people also feel like there is no evidence because of a couple of things. When I say no evidence, I mean there's no bloody clothes, there's no bloody shoe prints, there's no blood trail leaving away from the house, there's no weapon on the ground. They did find a glove, and there was some DNA on that glove, but that hasn't been really stated. I guess it'll come out if there's a trial, who the DNA belonged to, if they can match it. But the bigger writing theme was, how did they leave the scene without leaving behind evidence? There's an idea of transfer. So when you go into an area, they believe that you leave something in that area, and when you go to the next area, you're taking something from the area you was just in with you. So you see that, for example, with fibers. If I get on my bed, I get up, I might have fibers from my bed. They might be attached to my clothes. And then when I get in my car, the fibers that were on my bed are now in my car. When I get out of my car, something that I had in my car, it could be different type of fiber. It could be carpet fibers. And I'm going to work. Now I've walked on the carpet at work, and now I've transferred my carpet fibers from my car to my work. So that's the idea of transferring materials. The thing about the murders, and I'm so sorry I keep looking down. I'm trying to see my notes, but it's very dark. I can't see that well. The thing about the transfer, people are wondering, where is the evidence? Where is the DNA? Where is the blood? Where is the fibers? Where is any genetic material from any of the 4 victims? In a report that was recently released from a filing by the defense, it said that there was no evidence found, no DNA evidence found in Kohlberger's car, home, office. And people are trying to dismiss that and say, oh, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he didn't have any DNA evidence in his car, at his home, or in his office. Listen, I am no fool. With everything in me, I'm going to try as hard as I can to explain this in a respectful manner. I'm going to apologize up front if this is offensive to anybody that watches this video or shares this video. That's not my intention, but I have to be honest with the public. We have to take this case for what happened. In my first video, I briefly maybe said a few sentences on the lines of, there was blood everywhere, they were covered in blood, blood on the person, on the floor, on the walls. I just need to filter that out a little bit more. We have to consider what happened. And I don't want to repeat myself, but we have to slow it down, and we have to process this information. So let's slow it down a little bit. The night of the murder, November 13th, 2022, there were 5 human beings in that property. I'm sorry, 6 human beings in that property. Sometimes I forget the roommate on the first floor because she did not have a statement released yet, but she's definitely a part of the house. I just sometimes, forget about her a little bit because I've heard some information, and I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know if it's accurate, but she was definitely in the house on the first floor in her bedroom. And from my knowledge of what I've read and heard in the past, that her door was locked. So we're going to leave it there. It's so much I can say, and I'm just really trying to synthesize my thoughts. If the killer or killers knew that this was an all-girls house, this means that they can anticipate, for the most part, all of the females being at home at some point, or most of them being at home at some point, because somebody might spend the night out, or hang with their friends, or stay overnight somewhere, or go home for the weekend. There's so many different possibilities. But the anticipation is that this is going to be females, and possibly a friend may stay there because it was a party house. Wasn't a party going on that night. But if the killer was watching or knew, they may have anticipated the females being in the house, all females. We have to think about what really happened, which is 2 bedrooms on each floor, 2, 2, and 2. One roommate had recently moved out, but she came back to show her car. I'm not going to say any of the roommates' names. She was on the 3rd floor. We also know that the roommates Besides Ethan, he was with his girlfriend on the second floor. You all have two sets of two that were killed. So we have one individual locked in a room on the first floor that was not attacked. We have one individual that was locked in a room on the second floor that was not attacked. And then we have two sets of two that were attacked and killed. We have to think about that. I'm not asking any questions. I just want to think about how is that when you have a group of two versus individuals, the killer or killers is going to take the greater risk of killing and attacking two people in one room on the second floor and two people in one room on the third floor, when there's two individual people, one person on the first floor and one person on the second floor. We have to consider that. We have to think about that. I know a lot of people don't want to filter these thoughts, but we have to take that step. This is the page that's going to take that step and analyze everything. So that's something I want to, just put out there. The girls that were in the individual rooms were not attacked at all. That's something to be noted. We also have to remember that 911 was not called from approximately 4:30 a.m. to almost noon. That's approximately 7 to 7.5 hours of no support, no ambulance, no emergency services for the 4 young people that were attacked, 2 and 2 on the second floor, 2 on the third floor. When we know the person on the second floor saw the possible assailant, that's the statement that she provided. She saw him, and that was approximately 4:30 a.m. But 911 was not called until almost noon. We have to ask why. And we've already can imagine that person is fearful, scared, maybe feel terror, maybe feels traumatized. They lock their door and they hide. I mean, I don't know what happened. I'm just imagining. We really don't know. We only have the statement to go off of, but we have to start wondering, how is this person or persons, the killer, the assailant, or killers and assailants, did not attack the one person that clearly saw him as an individual when he was able to attack the couple on the second floor and then 2 girls on the third floor. Something to think about, right? I'm not trying to help the defense, but I am going to state my thoughts, what I'm considering and pondering in my mind, and maybe what jurors may consider and ponder. Because that's a huge gap in time. 7.5 hours. And we already know that it was already out. So someone either came into the house, left the house, or someone was called to come into the house, because we know by 8 a.m., many people were coming and knew about the murders. But the police, again, was not called to almost noon. So how does that happen if you have the ability to call out, or somebody already in the house that knew and saw it? We have to ask these questions. We have to wonder, was somebody in the house already? Maybe was somebody with those 2 other roommates? Or did someone else come? Or was someone else already there? And from early on, there was a neighbor that said the front door was open at 8 a.m. So if people already knew by 8 a.m., the front door was already open at 8 a.m., was that rear sliding door open? Because I see video with the police there and the rear sliding door is open. So was there 2 exit points? This is why we do have to know, is there 2 sets of stairs? We know there's a balcony, a huge balcony, beautiful huge balcony. somebody with strength, young youth, could jump over it, could climb down it, extend their arms and kind of drop down. You got that second floor where you walk out, and you got, of course, the first floor where you literally walk right out the first floor. Now, initially, I saw some video that showed the rear really dark, but then I saw some video within the last 2 days, and maybe they added lights up after the murders because it had more light. But that first video, when everything initially happened, it was dark. You could stand in the dark in those bushes because it's kind of steep to get down there where the parking is, and it was dark. But maybe after the murders, they added additional lighting because it was so dark. Don't know. But that's something, we gotta assess everything. So anyway, let's move forward and let's get to some of the tougher conversations. And those conversations, they have to do with the forensic side. And this is where I really have to kind of get into it and discuss some things. Now, what I'm going to say next, I'm not repeating what someone else said, but I'm kind of stepping into that door that was open. And again, I've already apologized if it's any offense taken by anyone. This is just for educational purposes. This is just for conversation to discuss what could possibly have happened. There have been leaks or information kind of released in the case that one of the victims had fought hard. One of the girls. No one has really talked about Ethan, and I guess I could talk about him a little separately. But when I hear a statement like that, that makes me believe that that person suffered major injuries. And as I told you in the last video, those injuries would be more likely on the hands as defensive wounds, the arms as you're trying to stop the attack. Sometimes you will get sliced by that knife. Sometimes you will have cuts on your hands, because usually when a person is being attacked, they may ball up and try to protect themselves, so their hands will cover their face or going across their chest. Sometimes a person will try to grab the weapon. In this case, it would be a knife. Sometimes when you're fighting for your life, sometimes you may try to rush a person. Now, these girls, I've already said before, I believe the attacker or attackers were males or male. I don't think the girls had a fighting chance. I've said that before. I don't want to labor that issue because they were smaller, petite girls. If they're coming up against a male figure and he has a knife and they're fighting back, they're struggling, they're battling, they're fighting back, they're putting up their arms, they're kicking, screaming, crying, yelling, they may have more injuries. But also something that we didn't talk about in the last video was the possibility that in the battle of the fight, a lot of times forensic has to bag the hands because they want to test the fingernails, take the scrapings under the nails to see if there was any DNA. There may be that transfer that I was talking about, the touching of the assailant, the clothing, any hair, if that person's hair was out, or persons. All of those things would be what forensics is looking for to test for DNA. So they're going to be looking at the nail clippings. They're going to be testing the clothing to see if there was any transfer, anything with the DNA. Right? They're going to be checking and testing the blood to see if possibly that attacker had that knife slip. Now, we talked about this last time with that K-bar knife. There's a piece of the knife that has a block. So when you're using the knife, your hand never slips over because it blocks it. That's really what you want to protect yourself when you're using a knife. So in the battle of a fight, it's highly unlikely that their hand is going to slip over the blade and cut because of that block, and that's why you use the K-bar knife. So with that being said, if there is blood, which I know it was blood, and I'm going to talk about the blood kind of separately, more than likely it's not going to be the assailant or the assailant's blood. It's going to be the victim's blood. And I believe because it was 4 victims, the likelihood that if they test the different samples of blood that's in the room, on the bed, on the floor, on the walls, on the ceilings, it's not going to be the attacker or attackers. It's going to be the victims only. Whew. I do want to say this about Ethan, and I kind of brought this up before because he was the only male that was being attacked, and that I felt he had the most strength, the most ability to fight back, being another male. The disadvantage of it all is that it was late. They were not prepared for any of what happened to them. They may have even been falling asleep or sleep. So I think it's important when they're doing the testing that they really look at the blood that was on the second floor, because Ethan may have been able to strike the person, may have had ability to grab them to possibly fight for the knife. I don't know. I'm just going in my thoughts to say that if there was any greater chance, it would possibly be on the second floor for any blood to come back with a different person's DNA. So I want to go back and say just this last thing. When you have a suspect in mind that you're focusing on, you want to make sure that if you get them in an interview room, or you can get a court order, you want to check to see if they have any defensive wounds, any fighting back wounds, any bruises. So for example, a female may use their fingernails. I have some fingernails here. I don't know. You can't see them. A little bit of fingernails to scratch. So the attacker may have scratches across their chest, on their face, whatever I can grab. Because I'm fighting, I'm grabbing, I'm putting my arm out, I'm hitting. So you want to make sure you took full body pictures of your prospective assailant or assailants to see if they have any fresh scratches, wounds, bruises, anything that look like they would be in a struggle or a fight. That's important. You want to note that. Even if some time have passed, you may still be able to identify any fresh bruising. Some people bite people. You can identify those bites by the teeth with dental records. So things like that, you want to consider. So now I want to go back to my original thought, my original question, the original idea that I kind of got from one or two videos was, how does the suspect or suspects leave the scene? It's not really a real question. It's just something to ponder. In the video, someone said, well, in order for no blood to be in the vehicle, they would have had to put plastic in the vehicle. Okay. You put plastic on the steering wheel, your seat, the flooring, the door handle, everything. Because you're going to be completely covered in blood from head to toe. From your shoes to your socks. Now, is that likely that somebody's driving around and their vehicle is completely covered in plastic interior and some exterior? How about the tires? For the tread on the tires. That's why they took a tire impression, right? It's just something to think about when people say things. They have to think things through logically. What is more likely? Someone wisely said, how about if the killer is within the house, right? That's where there's no blood trail. That's why there's no footprints walking away. Anybody can open the door from the inside, screen door, the front door, to make it appear as somebody left. And maybe that's why it took 7 to 7.5 hours to call the police. You call for help with your friends, but not emergency services. For one, help those victims. That's number one. And number two, get help secure the space to make sure the assailants are gone. But what if the assailant was in the house? And I'm not referring to the two female roommates necessarily. I have no idea. But the idea is that there was no need to concern about that bloody trail, tracking footprints, blood, clothing, any of that, because the killer was in the house. They never left. They had the stabbings. They went and took a shower and went back in their room. I don't know. That was just somebody's idea, but I thought it was very interesting. Something to consider. Also, if the killer was in the house and they were able to take a shower, change into fresh clothes, and just walk out. You know, how many hours would it have been for daylight? And if you're a student and you're walking on campus, how unusual would that be, that people are up late? There was also some talk that initially people thought that they received a bad batch of drugs. They OD'd. They did not have a way to explain what happened. And it was a cover-up. And it's been a cover-up from the beginning that they OD'd off bad drugs. That was somebody else's idea. That the knife wounds came later. And that the sheath was planted. And that's why there was no blood or DNA on the sheath. Some people also believe that the sheath was planted and that trying to think of the name of the DNA. The DNA that was on the sheath was placed. The touch DNA. And we kind of talked about the touch DNA before. You know, how easy it is to place that onto an object. I kind of gave an example, which wasn't the best example. It was just something I thought about quickly, but that's just something to think about. People are wondering, how is there no DNA? How is there no blood in the car? How is there no blood at home or at the office? And they're having a hard time connecting him also to the students. Some people also said, what if there was an issue where a person got into it with one of the other girls, and that's how the murders happened, that there was a fight. They did the killings and they left. So the person was already there. You know, because they don't know if the other two girls had company or not. And there's been rumors swirling quite a bit about drugs and selling drugs and things like that. I'm not going to go into, but all of that can play into why people are thinking the things that they're thinking. You know, people have a lot of questions and they want answers. And this case is highly publicized. Everything that happens is online. I'm watching it. I'm watching it every day with great interest. So they have a lot of questions about why there's no DNA from the motion that was filed by the defense, a Lincoln Kohlberger, other than that touch DNA. And people are very concerned about the source of the touch DNA. You know, how did they link that to Kohlberger? And the prosecutor is not wanting to provide that information. If the main thing that links a person to a crime scene, you have been able to vet through the FBI and whatever process, why should you not have to provide that to the defense? If it was above board, if it was accurate, it was legal, the search of that information, how it became a connection, how that family tree was built, was all above board. Why not share it? And then what about the other two DNA male profiles? Where were they found? And then that's the funny thing about DNA, right? We only know that you find it, but we don't know when you placed it there. Unless we have a video today that shows it wasn't there today and now it's there in 10 minutes, we have no time where we can place that. Just like the sheath. We have no idea when that was placed there, but it's a sheath and it's between the victims. It's in the scene, the crime scene, although it does not have any blood, and it's a bloody crime scene, meaning there's blood everywhere, in the bed, on the floor. I mean, in the original videos, you can see the blood leaking down the walls, on the floor. So for the sheath not to have any blood, and it's wrapped in a comforter with the victim, so people feel that the sheath is planted. They don't believe it. They don't believe it. And then with the prosecutor fighting the release of how they determined that Brian Kohlberger's DNA was his. Now, these people are smart and they're asking questions. These questions are valid. These are the things that we need to focus on when we're trying to figure out, do we have the right person, one? Do we have everybody involved, two? Was there more than one person? We have to consider that it could have been more than one person. I gave you my opinion in the other video. I didn't think it was, just because of the layout of the house. How you could be in one part of the house and not even know somebody's in another part or hear them or see them. Especially between hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Likely you're asleep. But in a college town where parties are going on, maybe you're oblivious to the sound and noise. Some people can sleep through anything. And if you're on a college campus, especially on a Saturday, Friday night, when you know it's parties going on, drinking, you may just overlook some screaming or yelling or laugh, you know, what you think is something. Don't know. I pretty much discussed most of what I wanted to hit at without being disrespectful to the families. My biggest point, well, two biggest points in this video is, how did they leave? Not how did, when I say they leave, I'm talking about the suspect or suspects, the killer or killers. Not really so interested in answering the question, but it's more about the forensics of it all. the transferring of DNA, of evidence. When you come to one place, you take something with you. When you leave something behind. That's what that question is really, really focused on. How did no DNA evidence, no blood, no materials manifest from that house, from those victims, from the flooring, to the blood, to the DNA from fighting, transfer over to Mr. Kohlberger's car, apartment, home, or office? None. As of right now, not a drop. Other than the sheath, which had touch DNA with, I don't want to go too far into it because it's so speculative, but and when you look at that scene, it's blood everywhere. From the news was able to zoom in, and you could see the blood dripping down the walls, on the floor, everywhere. So we have to consider the possibilities that there was no transfer as of right now from the information released, because it's getting to a point where it is being tried in the court of public opinion, and every day, we're hearing different things, right? Like right now they're saying they're going to go after the death penalty. And people feel that could benefit the prosecutor because each juror has to agree that they believe in the death penalty, and they will convict on the death penalty if they find this person guilty. That the circumstances would be as such. There's 5 different things. For example, one thing was you have to be committing like a felony, and then another felony happens. So a murder within a murder. So it's 4 murders. So of course that's one thing that they can prove, and that allows the case to get a death penalty conviction. But they get to pick death penalty jurors. So if you don't believe in the death penalty, then you can't sit on a jury because you would never convict. And they feel that people that agree with the death penalty will be more likely to agree with the prosecutor. So upping that ante helps the prosecutor. So the defense has to be even more active, more responsive, more vigilant, because now they're going to move forward on seeking the death penalty for these murders with Brian Kohlberger. So that's something too that's just come out. And the timing of it all, they had 60 days after he did his plea. So they had another, 20-something plus days. But people feel that they dropped it after all of these motions by the defense. And the biggest motion by the defense was the statement that, hey, there has been no DNA evidence connecting him to these victims. Not in the car, not in his apartment, not at his house, and not at his office. Show me your case. And now they want to go down that rabbit hole. How did you even find his DNA? How did you match the DNA to him off that sheet? What process was that? What did the FBI use? How did they connect him? And they're right. They're absolutely right. When this person's life is on the line, and it's important to get the right person, not just convict, but convict the right person, yeah, they need to know. That's fair. They're fighting that. They withheld some evidence, and it's been months. So they want that evidence to start moving forward so they can review it. Get their own investigators on it. Test the evidence as they feel needed. So they can build a defense. So that main question initially, it still stands. How did the killer or killers leave? That's just the tip of the iceberg. The bigger thing is all the DNA and forensics parts, and the blood, and the possible DNA under the fingernails, and where's the DNA on the blood clothing and shoes and socks, and where's all this evidence? If it's not with Kohlberger, who is it with? Have they focused on the wrong suspect? Is there another suspect? Is there more viable suspect? Because I know in the beginning, the white car, the model of the white car was not the year that he had. I think he had the 2016. I think they were looking for like up to a 2015. They changed that. They was talking about it was a Tesla. They changed that to the Elantra. And now you go back and look at videos, there's all kind of white cars parked there regularly, daily, even another Elantra with black tires. Now we have to start looking at things like, listen, there's some counter evidence. There's some differences that's coming out that's not consistent with what has the prosecutor has been pushing out there, or the media, or both. You know, it's important to get the right person. You know, and it just doesn't seem like some things are linking up, but this is just the beginning. So there's a lot of time to insert more evidence. The trial has not even begun. Jury selection has not even begun. But these are all good questions, good commentary, good thinking that, you know, we have to consider. We have to consider it all. We have to think. When they found their suspect, was there any marks, any bruises? Did they take a picture of Koberger's body, full body, for marks, bruises, injuries? And if they did, what did he say the injuries were from? They should have been able to get a warrant for that. At least to take the pictures, even if he's unwilling to provide information as to where, if any injuries existed. But they were for. I know when I seen him in court, I didn't see any injuries. But I'm only seeing his face and hands. I didn't see his arms, his chest. But they should have, you know, they should have taken pictures. Hopefully they did, to support their case and, you know, their allegations. Yeah, hopefully they did. So that's all I wanted to say. I mean, I want to say more, but I'm not, because I want to make sure anything that I say is something that's been out in the news, in the media, not just some ideas from a few people, but it's some wild stuff being said, and it's very contrary to the prosecution. And I don't know if it's going to play out, if all of what is being released and leaked is going to play out. I guess we have to wait and see. There will probably be a few more months before trial begins, and that's if it's not pushed back, just so they can process and review all of the evidence that's being turned over by the prosecution. It may be next year. I don't know. I know we're going to be coming up on a year pretty quickly. 4.5 more months, so let's just take it one day at a time and keep watching. So thank you for checking out my video. I hope you are able to go on this journey with me and learn some things. And wish you the best. And have a good night. Bye.